Hey friends, welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. My name is Jake, and we're looking at the Civivi Hadros today. Got a nice Wharncliffe hollow grind blade. You got micarta handle scales. You can also get this thing with wood handle scales and a pattern welded Damascus blade. This has 10CR50CO stainless steel for the blade, which is Chinese VG10. And, VG10, yeah, it's not bad. It's basically a budget steel these days, and this comes in at a budget knife price. $59.50 at White Mountain Knives, but you save 10% with our discount code CCE on everything you buy. That makes it about $53.55 US for this knife. Seems like a pretty fair price. That equals about, if you do the math, about 68 Canadian dollars. And the price in Canada for this is, I found it at Blades Canada for 95 Canadian dollars. So $27 more in Canada. And that's why I buy my knives in the United States. They're just cheaper. Some people email me every once in a while and say, but they're not cheaper. You know, you have to add the conversion rate in. Well, I've done that. I've done the conversion rate, $27 cheaper. And shipping's pretty cheap from White Mountain Knives. And in Canada, I find Blades Canada's shipping is not very inexpensive. It costs a fair bit. And then you still have to pay tax in Canada as well. Now, technically, you might have to pay tax on any packages coming in from the United States, but the odds are extremely low that you'll have to pay tax. There was just that one little period of time last year when CBSA had their work to rule thing when they were striking. And, you had to pay tax then for packages that came through. But other than that, I've never had to pay tax on knives coming in from the States. But the packages of knives that I get are not many hundreds of dollars. I don't spend an awful lot of money at one time. And so the more you spend, the more likely it is that it's going to get processed for tax. I really think you can save money by buying your knives if you're Canadian at White Mountain Knives. But you do have a small risk. Over the years, it works out to around 5% chance that your knives will get stopped at the border. It's a little bit less than 5% chance. So if you're willing to take that risk, there you go. But I'm babbling on too much. My American friends are tired of hearing this. And my European friends and stuff. Because, believe it or not, guess how many Canadian viewers I have? Guess down below in the comment section. The percentage of the viewers that I have, how many of them are Canadians? It's less than 10%. It's unfortunate. It's another reason why I buy my knives in the US. That's my biggest viewership, is my American friends. So thanks for stopping by. After that, in Europe, Germany, I get a bunch of viewers out of Germany. Well, I'm not going to go over the whole list. Wherever you live, thank you very much for choosing to watch this video. If you're interested in this knife, stick around. The full review, teardown, everything is coming to you in just a minute. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention in the intro, this is a LBRY design. And Civivi doesn't put a lot of badging on their knives. You can see a little M right there for his LBRY logo. Right there, you can just barely see it. There's the steel type 10CR15CO right there. And on this side, you've only got the C from the pin. And that's it. We've got a nice Wharncliffe blade here. There's a bit of a transition point right there that you can see that they didn't smooth it out. It's dropping down already, and then it drops down more quickly. I wish they would have made that smoother so you wouldn't see that transition point. If there is any cons, you have to find tiny things like that on this knife. There's just so much good about this knife and so little to be picky about. And so, yeah, right there, I would have liked that just to be smoothed all the way out. Got a nice hollow grind, really thin behind the grind like it should be. That makes the tip really thin on a hollow grind, so you got to be careful with the tip a little bit. There's the thumb studs. They've got a little bit of texture on them. They are very easy to engage. There's lots of room in here, on both sides to easily get in there and deploy the blade. If you're right-handed or left-handed, no problem. Just works really well. There's not really so much of a sharpener's choil, but there is, a sharpener's choil of sorts. So there's access here so that when you're sharpening the knife, you're not going to get into the plunge and mess it up unless you're not being careful. So it's not hard to be careful enough not to get into the plunge. So that's well done. There's ever so slightly a tiny bit of a recurve on here. So whoever was sharpening this thing at the factory put a little more pressure in the middle of the blade than they did at either end. They didn't do a very good job sharpening it anyway, so there's that, but it's still nice and thin, not that hard to sharpen at home because you got nice big flats here. If you use a guided sharpening system, you can clamp onto there and sharpen away. Quite like that. Lockup, action, all that stuff is quite good. Lockup is exactly where I like it to be on a brand new knife, so I'm very happy about that. Access to the lock release, the liner comes out a little bit. There's a bit of jimping on the side. Easy to get your thumb in there to disengage the lock, and when you do, and there's no pressure from the liner and the detent ball on the side of the knife, the blade just falls very nicely. No blade play side to side, up and down when it's locked up. It's quite good. Alignment when it's closed, it's a tiny bit off. A little bit closer to the show side with the C here than it is on the other side, but not by much. It is very, very close to right down the middle. Pretty good. Like I said, we've got micarta. They've polished this micarta and rounded off all the edges. So it's not as grippy as I thought it might be, since it is micarta, because they did all that polishing work. It's a skinny handle like this, so you have to be prepared for that. It's a little harder to sometimes get your indexing. You have to trust your thumb on the back to get your indexing off of it so you know exactly which way your blade is all the time. Of course, you generally know, of course, but to know exactly, you gotta trust your thumb on the back. I would have liked a little bit of jimping right there. Not much, just maybe a little bit. Not a big deal at all. I'd like this handle, if I was designing it, I'd make it just a little bit deeper this way. Not much, just a little bit. It's for us guys with the bigger hands. I don't have huge hands, but they're just within the extra large range a little bit. I'd like it just to be a little bit bigger. Not bad. I'm being picky because this knife is so good. We've got an open construction. We've got these pins at the back with the hourglass shape, just 2 of them. T8 screws, nice and small, which I really like. What I mean by small is the T8 hole, and then they don't come really wide out of that, but they work really, really well. Civivi knows how to make good screws. If you watch that Kubi video that I did just before this one, these screws, they're identical. They're interchangeable. I really have a good feeling, or a bad feeling. I don't know which way is it. I've got a feeling Civivi and Kubi are probably made in the same factory, or they're accessing the same hardware pool for their screws. Lots of open, the words just aren't coming today for some reason. Lots of skeletonizing on this side. The other side's got a little bit of skeletonizing. The liners are even with the handle scales, but they're nicely soft and they're rounded everywhere, so there's no sharp edges for your hand on there. There's no lanyard hole on this knife, so if you are a big fan of lanyards, there's none there. You could tie it off on the pocket clip maybe. I've heard some guys do that, but I don't, but some guys do. The pocket clip is a little bit deeper this way than it needs to be, but it's a very nice pocket clip. Flush screws, not too terribly big. Oh, there we go. It's fully functional. It climbs over and slides down. If you could look from the side, if I could turn it this way and have you see it, there's a lot of space in here. You could have twice as thick of a pocket and it would still have room in there to be loose. And that's what I mean. It could make that just a little bit smaller And if they did, it would be even more comfortable in the hand than it is. This pocket clip does not make a hot spot in the hand, but it would be even more comfortable if that was just a little bit tighter. Kind of like that Kubi knife that I did, the KU-122. It's a little bit tighter this way, and also with flush screws, and that's good. I don't know, maybe they're making them the same size this way as they did when they used to use button screws, and button screws took up some of the space. It's okay. It's not a big complaint at all. You have to try to find something for a con, and that's a little bit of a con. Happily, it works on the other side. We've got no inset hole milled out or anything. It's just flush with two little holes for the screws if you want to move it to the other side. And that too is just like the Kubi the other day. So there's a lot of similarities in the construction. So I really do think that might be one of the things. There's not that many knife factories in China, in the knife making district. So there's got to be a number of brands that share factories and technologies and stuff, even if they don't, share designers or administration. It's time now to take this thing apart and show you how it's built. Okay, when I started to take it apart, I remembered another con that I don't like, and that is the pocket clip hides access to that screw. So I had to take the pocket clip off to take that screw off, to take off the screws all from the same side to take it apart, which, it's not bad. I just don't like doing that. We've got nice little screws, well-made, high-quality screws. Nice pivot screw right there. Good hardware. There is a tiny bit of Loctite on them. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the way that Civivi keeps the pivot pin from spinning, there's a little bit of a bump built in there. And then in the pin here, that's got the C on the other side, there's a tiny little notch. There's your skeletonizing. Again, that one little hole on the other side. We've got ceramic detent ball. We've got tiny little ceramic ball bearings. So really basic construction. And, there's the hourglass shaped pins to hold it together. Well made. Very simple construction. There's a couple things I missed at the beginning of the video. Size comparison. Yeah, it's smaller than an Ontario Rat 1 in every single measurement, except for the cutting edge length. I like doing that because very often the cutting edge length on the Ontario Rat is the same size as smaller knives. Before I do the measurements, another thing I noticed, when I put it back together, I lubed it and everything nicely. I tightened it up, and the blade centering is better now. It's smack dab in the middle right now. Let's go over all the sizes, dimensions, specs, and stuff. Like I said, this steel, this 10CR15CO MOV is basically VG10. Rockwell hardness on this is around 60. Some companies go even higher. So it's a good hard steel. It's a good steel. The weight of this knife, it is 73 grams, 2.55 ounces. Yeah, 2.5 ounces basically for this knife. Not bad at all. Sharpness from the factory, 170 bests. That's okay. They could have got it quite a bit better, and I'll tell you about why when we go over the angles that they sharpened it to. The cutting edge length is 82.8 millimeters. That's 3.26 inches. Blade length, tip to the closest spot on the handle, is just a bit more, 86.3 millimeters. That's 3.4 inches. The blade thickness, 2.99 millimeters. That is 0.1175 of an inch, so just under 1/8 of an inch. The blade depth, its biggest right here at the heel of the blade, 24 millimeters. That's 0.945 of an inch. How thin is it behind the grind? 0.44 millimeters, 17 thousandths of an inch. Very good. So with the hollow grind, you'll be able to sharpen this thing a number of times before it starts getting too thick behind the grind. I like that. The grind angles. This side, about 23.6. Yeah, that's not great, but it's not bad at all. This side 26.1 degrees. And the variability along it is just 1 degree. So they did a pretty consistent job with the angle, but 23.6 and 26, yeah. This steel on this type of knife, 18 degrees per side would be really nice. And that's what I'm going to do when I sharpen it. If I sharpen it. It might be sold before I sharpen it. I don't know. It's not that sharp right now because I put it through a load of tests. It cuts quite well. It pierces well with this tip as long as you're careful. And it slices okay too. But it's a great cutter and a great piercer and a pretty good slicer. Back to the measurements. I get distracted sometimes, don't I? The handle length, 106.6 millimeters, 4.2 inches. The grip area, it's about 9.5 centimeters, 3 3/4 inches. Lots of real estate there. The thickness of the handle, that is 12.42 millimeters, which is 0.488 of an inch. The depth of the handle within the grip area, it's widest right at the start here. 16.3 millimeters, 0.642 of an inch. When the knife is closed, the widest point is right back here, pretty much even with this body screw back here. 29.4 millimeters, 1.157 inches. Total length of this knife from end to end, 192.1 inches, millimeters, 7.6 inches. So, pretty good. I went over the price before. Yeah, well under $60. $59.50. Well under if you take your 10% off with your discount code CCE. $53.55. Is that a good deal for this knife? I think so. If you don't mind the few little cons that there are of this knife, yeah, this is nice. I'm a big fan of hollow grinds. I'm a big fan of thumb studs. So there is a chance that this guy is going to be a keeper of mine. I can't keep too many knives because I need the funds to buy more knives. I sell most of what I review, but I sell it for about 30% off. And so I need to have supporters as well. So to my Patreon supporters and my YouTube member supporters, you guys are awesome. Thank you very, very much for your ongoing support. I appreciate it a lot. And as I was saying, my supporters, one of them, randomly drawn every month, gets to win one of the knives that I reviewed in the previous month. So that's good. I also let them have early access to all of my knife sales. Now, I did a knife sale last week, but I only sent it out to my Patreon supporters because I only had 10 knives. And so most of them, or half of them, were purchased. So I've got 5 knives left over. I'm just going to wait and try to sell those again in a month or two. So if you're just a general viewer of mine, sorry, there won't be a knife sale coming anytime terribly soon. A month or two. This knife, my general thoughts. I like it. It feels okay in the hand. I wouldn't mind if it was, like I said, a little bit bigger, but it's okay. In the left hand, the right hand pocket clip is a bit annoying, but if you're left-handed, move the pocket clip over. You know, in my right hand, the right hand pocket clip is just fine. So there's that. I'm a bit ambidextrous, so I tend to leave the pocket clips on the right side, and I just sort of deal with it. I grew up left-handed, but I'm, almost better now with knives in my right hand than I am with my left. So it's probably because, when I grew up, knife in the right hand, fork in the left, and that's how I was taught to use my utensils. So maybe that's why I'm better with my left hand with knives, even though I'm better with my right hand with knives, even though I'm left-handed. Anyhow, this knife, see, I get distracted sometimes. I like the open pillar construction. That's nice, but I don't mind backspacers either. That's here nor there. It's quite nice. It's solid, good quality screws. We've got a decent pivot. Lockup's good. Release is good. Alignment's good. Action's good. The hand feel is quite good. The steel type is quite good. And if you want a higher end version of this thing, it's not even that expensive. $85 for the wood with Damascus. Take off 10%, that makes it $76.50. which is less than $20 more than this. So that's not bad. If you are in Canada and you just want to get one of these anyway, Integrity Knives doesn't have this, so you can't get your 10% off there. With coupon code CCE, you'll have to go to Blades Canada or somewhere else, and they've got it for $94.99. So there you go, the Civivi Hadros. I quite like it. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, cut towards your chum, not your thumb. And bye for now.